Following risk factors: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high blood sugar, and are overweight. My Heart provides free doctor visits, lab tests, medication, and access to total wellness classes at no cost. For information about the My Heart program, call 419-4049 or go to occhd.org.
This is AM 1220, KTLV, Midwest City, Oklahoma City, and streaming audio at KTLV1220.com.
This is Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour on KTLV 1220. Good evening, I'm Jonathan Clour. Welcome to the program. Tonight is the evening of the 74th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. On the show, we remember that fateful day and all the lives that were affected or lost by the Japanese attack. The attack on Pearl Harbor catapulted the United States into World War II, issuing a draft of all abled bodies into the military. Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941, the USS Oklahoma was one of the ships sunk by Japanese torpedoes. Tonight, we recount history and honor the sacrifice of our veteran military men and women. This evening, Oklahoma Senator AJ Griffin joins the program. Senator Griffin, welcome to Oklahoma Voice.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Pleasure to be with you this evening.
I'm glad you're able to make it. You represent District 20 in the Oklahoma legislature. Tell us about your district.
Senate District 20 encompasses 4 counties, and I always describe it as the 4 rural counties lying just north of Oklahoma City. I have Kingfisher County, Logan County, Noble, and Pawnee County. So very diverse district that spreads from western Oklahoma to eastern Oklahoma. I have all 3 area codes in my Senate district and some of Oklahoma's richest communities with a lot of great small towns that are very active, and many of them are thriving today. So it's a great place. I make my home in the southern part of Logan County, and I've called the Guthrie area home for over 20 years. So my husband is a Guthrie native, and so our family's been in the area for about 4 generations now.
Excellent. Have you been an Oklahoma native yourself?
I am born and raised. I actually grew up in northeastern Oklahoma, a small community called Adair, which lies in Mays County. By the way, my alma mater, my high school alma mater, will be taking on Haskell for the state's 2A football championships on this coming Saturday, so excited about that. But grew up on a farm in northeastern Oklahoma. My parents were educators, and we ran cattle. My mom still lives there on our ranch today and continues to take care of a small herd of cows and has calves every fall. And she's still there as my remaining grandmother. We'll celebrate her 95th birthday on the 12th of December.
Well, wish her a very happy birthday for us.
Thank you.
Well, so many folks in rural parts of Oklahoma can definitely relate to keeping up a property, and it looks like that you've seen firsthand experience how much work and labor it takes to keep your homestead up like that.
Yeah, I grew up helping my dad and my grandfather whenever he was still with us, and it's a great way to grow up. And my district represents a lot of those same rural values, but I also have the distinction of getting to serve the Edmond area as well. Southern part of Logan County, where Oklahoma City and Edmond have grown up, and it's really kind of the best of both worlds, that suburban culture and then a lot of rural Oklahoma in my district. Wonderful communities of Guthrie, of course, and then I also have Perry and Pawnee, and some of Oklahoma's oldest communities, and they're all thriving, and it's just a great area to represent. And I also say that, some of Oklahoma's best people come from the 20th Senate District of the state.
Wow. I was just curious, has there been a Democrat elected to your seat?
I was the first person elected to this district after redistricting. actually replaced Senator David Myers when he passed away in a special election. So I ran in a brand new district. But the Guthrie area in particular has been a hotbed for Republican elected officials for quite some time. Guthrie's the home of Representative Frank Davis, former Representative Frank Davis, who served for over 20 years in the Oklahoma legislature, including about 8 years as a minority leader in the House of Representatives. Representative Davis still makes his home in the area, and I go and seek his counsel quite frequently, and he laughs that he never had the pleasure of serving in the majority, and he hopes that I never have the disappointment of serving in the minority.
Of course. Well, how did you get involved in public service and politics?
Like many of the women elected to the Oklahoma legislature, I was recruited. For some reason, women candidates generally tend to need to be recruited. Someone needs to seek them. And I was just recruited by local leaders in our community. Been very active in the Guthrie area for quite some time, and served on a lot of boards, and been in leadership positions in my church. And so they sought me out. At the time, I was the executive director of a fairly large nonprofit that serves children and families in the Logan County area and Kingfisher County as well. So it's fairly familiar with the communities in Kingfisher County. And, of course, that's still, as an elected official, still what I spend the vast majority of my time working on are the state's issues around children, in particular, our juvenile justice system, and, of course, child welfare. A lot of my legislation is in those two areas, and I spend a lot of time, trying to improve the lives of kids and families, just like my other job, but now it's from a different perspective. It's from the legislative and policy-making perspective.
I see. And you mentioned your job. How about tell us about your career leading up to elected office?
Well, the path that God has chosen for me was not straight, I can tell you that. I meandered around. I spent 8 years in the classroom as a classroom teacher, and before that, I actually got into education through the back door because I was a restaurant professional. Right out of college, spent several years running restaurants, and actually studied hotel restaurant management at Oklahoma State University. That is a hard business, and I tip my hat to anyone that works in the restaurant industry now. I know how hard they work, especially this time of the year. It's a very busy time for most of our restaurants. And then I went to work teaching the culinary arts to young people and adults, and had a good career in education. Stayed on with my children for several years to get them off on the right foot, and then got back in the workforce and kind of joined my love for working with kids and my business background by running nonprofit businesses. And I consider the nonprofits and philanthropy my calling. That's the path that God wants me to take, and still keep in touch with that profession by doing some development work for some great organizations. Right now I'm working closely with a group called Mission Generation. I'd love to tell you about that sometimes, Jonathan.
Well, sure.
Great international nonprofit that's located or headquartered right here in Oklahoma City. And then I do some consulting with other nonprofits on the side, helping them with their development and trying to help them fulfill their mission to serve the community in whatever capacity they may be working.
Right. Well, you're more than welcome to elaborate more on that if you'd like.
Mission Generation is headquartered here in Norman, Oklahoma, but they work in Latin American countries, providing a school-based curriculum around character education that is actually based on the Bible.
Huh.
And it has been embraced by several Latin American countries by their governments, and it is a required subject in companies like Paraguay in their schools. Also in Panama and Colombia, several of and it's just grown like gangbusters in Latin America. Seeing great results with young people that are taught how to use the Bible as a tool to make decisions in their life. And these government schools are placing the Bible in in their curriculum as a requirement, and seeing a lot of great results. And drug abuse is down, teen pregnancy is dropping in the countries that are using the curriculum. And, we're hopeful that there are opportunities for this curriculum to come to the United States as well. So I work with that group, and just kind of getting started with that, but very pleased with where that ministry can go, and I'm very proud to be associated with Mission Generation. If anybody's interested in that, they just check that out at missiongeneration.org. Some great videos on the work that we're doing with young people in Latin America.
Okay, missiongeneration.org.
That's it.
All right. And I believe earlier this year, or perhaps it was last year, I can't remember, I thought Mustang Public Schools was trying to adopt some curriculum that would bring biblical literature to the classrooms. And I knew that had caused somewhat of an uprising, and there was people on both sides of the fence, some people supporting it, some people against it. I don't know if you recall this or not, but where do you stand on having biblical literature and things like that in the classrooms?
Well, anybody who denies the fact that even if you aren't a practicing Christian and you aren't a person of faith, you cannot deny that the Bible is obviously a great work of literature.
Right.
I mean, goodness knows it's the longest enduring piece of books that we have. More of them have been sold than any other book in the history of the world. So to discount the Bible as a piece of literature is just, quite frankly, ludicrous. And all children, regardless of their faith base, should be exposed to it. And so I like the idea of schools embracing the Bible as to study the Bible just for the merits of it as far as history goes. I mean, and you can definitely count that whether you're a person of faith or not. I'm excited to one day, hope very soon, when the Greens have their Bible Museum completed. I think what a great way to tell the world the story of the Bible and its importance to the history of the world. And I know that it was Mustang Schools. I remember Senator Lovelace was involved in that somewhat. But it makes sense for our kids to study the Bible and to understand it and understand the story of the Bible as it relates to all events in history.
I know recently, the past few decades, it has become a faux pas, something to stay away from talking about in public, religion, especially the Christian faith. And our new generations that are growing up in the United States today, they are experiencing a different dynamic than our generations before. And they're growing up in this, in schools and, in an environment to where you're not supposed to talk about, your Christian faith, or if you do, it's very uncomfortable. Is this going to be something that will negatively affect our future generations, and what can we do to combat that?
Well, I'll start by saying that, I thank God every day that we have the joy to live in Oklahoma. In most Oklahoma communities, and I know in the vast majority of Senate District 20, the communities are the community leaders, the community educators are overwhelmingly individuals of faith that whether they are allowed to officially share their faith with kids in the classroom, I know that the vast majority of them do it unofficially, and that they pray for the kids in their class, and that they live every day in a way that exhibits Christian values to their children, and that they're teaching those, even if it's not directly. So we're very fortunate to live here in Oklahoma. But there's a lot to be said for when we remove those basic American values from our institutions, all institutions, whether these are institutions that serve children or they're institutions of local government and county government and state government. When we begin to remove that basic foundation of Americanism, that we will begin to lose our culture. It is ironic that we're not allowed in our schools and in some of those core institutions in a lot of our smaller communities to outwardly profess our faith, but yet at the state level, we're very fortunate. We begin every session in the Oklahoma legislature in prayer. Every session, every time we open a session, and each day within our majority caucus, we begin every meeting that we have in prayer. And so we have that ability as elected officials to outwardly show our faith and to make sure that our faith is the center of everything that we do. We need to get back to allowing our local officials, especially within the schools and within county governments and city governments, to regain and retain that if they choose, because those institutions need to be reflective of the community and the values of the community. And I do believe that it's possible for Christians to express their faith while still embracing and at least being respectful of others, of the minority faith in our state. We have Jews that live among us, and they deserve to practice their faith and be respected. But it does not mean that the majority faith, which obviously in this country is the Christian faith, should not be exhibited openly whenever we feel the need to call upon God and have Him direct our activities.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Going back to your tenure in the Oklahoma State Senate, going in as a freshman, did you have any eye-opening experiences? Were you overwhelmed?
Well, of course, when you're brand new, they describe it as drinking from a fire hose, which I actually like the analogy that it's like going to college and majoring in everything.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Because there's so many different things. I had the unique opportunity. I was elected in a special election in April of 2012 with only 6 weeks remaining in that 2012 legislative session. So I had this wonderful opportunity to be present and have the authority to vote on things without a lot of responsibilities. I had no legislation that I was carrying with my name on it. Although had been assigned to committees, I had no committee leadership responsibilities. And so I tell everyone that I spent those 6 weeks with my mouth shut, my eyes and ears wide open, just simply trying to absorb everything around me. I came with a fairly clear understanding of the process, and unlike some of my colleagues, had been at the Capitol doing advocacy work and had worked alongside legislators. I knew how to read a bill. I knew the committee process. So I was kind of had a leg up on some brand new, newly elected individuals. And then when I came back for that next session, I was ready to go and just carrying my own legislation and ready to present things on the floor and be an effective advocate for my district. So I've now had 3 additional full sessions, have had to run for re-election already, which is kind of unusual for a senator to only have 4 years of experience, but have already had to be re-elected once.
Yeah.
And have had the pleasure of being elected to leadership positions within and appointed to leadership positions within the Senate. So it's a unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
Running campaigns is a unique experience. There's nothing like it, but it is definitely my honor to serve my district and to represent my constituents and help them solve problems and to work on the projects and the areas that I feel passionate about and feel like I have some experience and some knowledge that can improve services provided by the state.
People don't realize how much work and effort it takes to successfully run a campaign and how much groundwork you have to do day and night, knocking on doors and, raising money. You got to wear so many different hats, and people don't understand that until they've actually been in the middle of it.
Well, I know I didn't. I had no idea. But there's a lot of these misconceived, and you have this just kind of a perception of running campaigns. I will say that knocking doors is my favorite part of the campaign because you have the opportunity just to meet one-on-one with individuals And I enjoy doing it for myself, and I enjoy doing it for other candidates, helping other candidates get elected as well. If it's someone that I feel passionate about their capacity to do the job. There are parts of it that I'm not as fond of. Fundraising is not any fun. As someone who has spent the better part of their life working in nonprofits, I don't have any trouble at all asking for money for other people. But it's a unique experience. Raising funds for your own campaign is a little awkward at first. But I do enjoy the one-on-one contact with constituents. And, now I've been around long enough that I swear half of the people in the 4-county area have my cell phone number. So now when you're knocking doors, it's reconnecting with people you already know. So which is even more fun.
Right. What committees do you serve on?
I am the vice chair of the Energy Committee, and in my role in the Energy Committee is I generally work on electric power issues, a very diverse array of ways you can sell electric power, and a little bit of history working in that utilities area. I am the vice chair of the Health and Human Services Sub-Appropriations Committee. I work alongside Senator Kim David, and she and I are responsible for writing the budgets for 11 of our state agencies, all those in the Health and Human Services, most notably the Oklahoma Health Care Authority, which is the Medicaid program, and the Department of Human Services, which obviously everyone knows is one of our larger state agencies. Additionally, I serve on the Judiciary Committee, where I am the juvenile justice person on that committee. I'm on the Rules Committee, which is our leadership committee in the Senate. So all the members of the leadership team are on the Rules Committee. We're responsible for legislative rules and election policy and all of those HJRs that would potentially become state questions go through the Rules Committee as well. And then, of course, we did something different last year, and all members of the Oklahoma Senate are members of the Senate Appropriations Committee. We did that intentionally, knowing that the budget over the next several years was going to require all hands on deck. So all 48 of us are the members of the full Senate Appropriations Committee. And that means any legislation that has anything to do with our finances and the expenditure of taxpayer dollars are seen, all of those legislative items are seen by all of the members in committee and on the floor. So we have adequate time to really hopefully vet those pieces of legislation.
All right. Are there any defining pieces of legislation that you've written or co-authored that we should know about?
I'm very proud of several things around kids and families. Representative Sally Kern and I, 2 sessions ago, ran the Parents' Bill of Rights, defining that parents in the state of Oklahoma are, to paraphrase President Bush, the deciders when it comes to their kids. And that piece of legislation has had some far-reaching impact in other areas. We currently have a debate regarding immunization choice in Oklahoma. And quite frankly, that's already been decided. Because of the Parents' Bill of Rights, we know currently that parents are the ultimate authority when it comes to their children. Their health care decisions, their educational decisions, those should all be in the authority of parents. So the Parents' Bill of Rights I'm very proud of. And ran a piece of legislation last year that didn't get a lot of attention, but it defined in state statute what it means for a parent to fail to protect their child. We actually gave that a definition. When we remove children from their parents' custody for the children's safety, very frequently that terminology is used, that we're going to retain custody of that child because the parent has failed to protect the child. In my experience working with child welfare and as a child advocate, we government officials tended to be a little loose in the use of that, and so I'm very proud of putting a definition on that to ensure that if we're exerting government authority over families to protect children, that it's done with a lot of prudence and that it's well thought out and that we aren't exercising undue authority over our families. Several other pieces along that line, we didn't in Oklahoma have a definition for a juvenile that was charged with a crime, if they would be incompetent to stand trial for that crime. We were assuming that our courts always treat juveniles with the goal to rehabilitate them. Doesn't necessarily always happen, so we clarified several things around juvenile justice, and we're proud of that piece of legislation that went through the process last year and became law on November 1st. I am one of I call myself a workhorse instead of a show horse. I carry a lot of legislation. I generally will have 20 or 25 pieces of legislation signed by the governor.
Wow.
And they're almost all improvements and tweaks to our policies around kids and families, and which is a continual process to try to get better and to try to create a system that allows families to retain their autonomy and to thrive in our state, and also to protect children whenever, unfortunately, as happens all too often, we have parents that abuse and neglect their children.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. We see where your heart lies, and we see that's with the family and providing a service to them. Senator Griffin, we're going to cut to a hard break to let our listeners know how to access Oklahoma Voice, and you can tune into our program live using the TuneIn Radio app. If you don't have it already downloaded to your phone, I want to remind you that it is 100% free. Simply go to your App Store selection on your phone, tablet, computer, or smart device and enter TuneIn Radio into the selection bar and click download. After you have it installed on your device, open the app, find the search bar at the top of your screen and enter KTLV. You'll find it at the top of your list. Select KTLV and then push play. It's that easy. We also have another option to gain access to Oklahoma Voice, and that is live streaming at KTLV.com. We've also created a channel on YouTube where you can rewatch any shows that you might have missed, and that is at Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. These are all recorded by webcam and downloaded the evening of the show. So if you want to see what's happening in the studios during the broadcast, we suggest you visit our YouTube channel. Folks, you're listening to Oklahoma Voice. I'm Jonathan Clour. Tonight we have Senator AJ Griffin on the program. She represents Senate District 20 in the Oklahoma legislature, and she is on the show tonight to introduce herself and to weigh in on the issues. As I mentioned earlier in the program, today is the 74th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. America woke up Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941, scared, shocked, and bewildered when they heard the news of the attacks. 74 years later, America finds itself in a similar situation, under attack, not from the Japanese or another far-off country, but by terrorists on our own soil and by the terrorist group, ISIS. Senator Griffin, you listened to President Obama's rare speech from the Oval Office last night, but in the speech, he highlighted the U.S. plan to defeat and to destroy ISIS as well as issuing comments involving the San Bernardino tragedy. We want to catch the audience up to speed on this tragedy. And just a few days ago, 14 Americans lost their lives at a holiday party in San Bernardino, California, by a couple that had given in to radical Islamic beliefs and shot and killed Americans varying of ages. You know, we've stood witness to Obama's addresses to the public after tragedies such as this, and usually in these speeches, he will bring up gun control. The president has been criticized by conservatives that he uses these shootings as a platform to further his proposed gun control crackdown. Senator Griffin, perhaps I should say, will a mass government gun grab be the answer to eliminate these attacks? Is the answer to take up the guns?
Well, there is no evidence that disarming American law-abiding citizens keeps us safer. In fact, there's significant evidence to the contrary. I think that has probably been known by law-abiding Americans for quite some time, that the only way that we insulate ourselves against the existence of evil in our communities is we must have those that are good, that are law-abiding, that are faith living individuals prepared to protect themselves, their families, and their community. And most of those folks we call law enforcement officers, and we arm them intentionally and deliberately. But we know that government can't and shouldn't be everywhere, and that those of us that are simple citizens that are not part of our law enforcement must also be part of the solution. It is quite unfortunate, and although not surprising at all, that President Obama used the opportunity to draw a line that's simply not congruent at all. There is no line between these acts of terror and gun control. It's just inconceivable that he would attempt to make that as a correlation. That the problem we have in the United States and the reason we have terrorism is because we have law-abiding citizens that own weapons. What we have were two individuals that used a weapon to perpetrate an act of terror and an act of evil. But they could have used guns, they could have used knives, they could have used, obviously they were intent on using bombs. I find it inconceivable that he draws the line between the two. On the contrary, I think that what we need in this country, in order to insulate ourselves against acts of terrorism on our soil, first of all, we need collaboration among all those in authority and law-abiding citizens, so that see something, say something. If you feel uncomfortable about behavior in your community, you're probably right, and that you notify and you work alongside law enforcement to stop that activity. And we also need the capacity to protect ourselves, so that, if anyone comes to this country intent on doing harm, they will be met with equal force.
And to echo what you said, I've heard through the grapevine that there was a person that had seen this couple that had committed this tragedy in San Bernardino. They did somewhat have evidence, and they saw that they were plotting something, but they were afraid to report it because of their ethnicity.
Well, I know hindsight is always 20/20. I'm sure that these neighbors probably, in hindsight, realized there really was something going on. It's evidence that unfortunately, and I say that, we all pine for the good old days gone by. We've never lived in a world that was, we live in a fallen world, and since Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, we've lived in a world that had evil, had others intent on doing harm to one another. That's nothing new. We've never lived in a world that was peaceful and completely free of violence. We have a new type of violence that manifests itself in this country, and it's important for all of us to pay attention. I actually feel for the neighbors that now look back with what they know now and I'm sure they all wish they would have said something, wish they would have paid more attention and been more vigilant. It's up to all of us. We've all learned as we travel with airplanes that you pay attention and that you watch your surroundings, that we're all in this together. We all must live side by side as Americans, and so it behooves all of us to care for one another and to do that by looking out for individuals intent on doing harm. And they need to know that they will be met with force. It is unreasonable to disarm America and think that makes us safer.
And it's a fact that the Japanese had considered a land invasion on American soil. However, they were afraid to because the American populace is an armed people. And I believe that you had said earlier that, our society is better armed. And last night, the president proposed that folks on the no-fly list is restricted from buying guns, and that people should not be able to purchase the guns that were used in San Bernardino during this tragedy. will these measures really help crack down on terrorism, or is it just simply eroding at the Second Amendment gun rights?
To the first point, that people that are on the no-fly list, I'm certainly not an expert in intelligence, but we haven't seen a lot of evidence that necessarily that the watch list and the no-fly list are always foolproof. Mm-hmm. So I think that probably there's a much better system needs to be developed in order for, especially citizens. If you're going to restrict the rights of a citizen, you certainly better have a darn good reason. Right. And I don't know that everybody whose name winds up on the no-fly list has been proven to have been participating in some activities. But the types of the weapons, the number, I've heard individuals on, limiting the size of the magazines and all. There is no evidence that any of those things actually have a huge impact, and they certainly don't restrict the behaviors of individuals intent on doing harm. Mm-hmm. I don't think a rule and words on a piece of paper are not going to change the behavior of someone intent on doing harm. Mm-hmm. Those of us that live by the law would restrict our behavior, but the others would not as well. Really, it's the behavior of the individuals involved that, those that are selling weapons pay attention, and if they think maybe something might be up with someone, that they notify authorities. Additional laws aren't going to do anything. Mm-hmm.
And last night, Fox News television host Judge Jeanine Pirro made quite the provocative statement. She vocalized that President Obama urges that we should not denigrate Muslims by the actions of a select radical few, but then he turns around and is willing to denigrate gun owners based on the actions of a select few and pushes for gun control. Do you feel that this statement was taken too far, or is there a disparity among these issues?
Well, disparity among the issues as the left is kind of par for the course. we're use that to will manipulate anything to make it fit the narrative. I believe that part of my responsibility as a person who follows the commandment that we are to love one another, that attempt to treat everyone with the respect that they are due. However, I also think that it is important that we also accept our responsibility to participate in our own protection. Now, that's why we have the Second Amendment. It's mm-hmm. to encourage individuals to participate in their own protection. And as a government of the people, for the people, by the people, we use the phrase, we the people. We cannot expect government to protect us mm-hmm. all the time, everywhere. And what we've had happen in our country is that because of this need to reach out and this, as government has kind of gobbled up a lot of the responsibility for things like personal protection, they've done so at the peril of some of the things that, in particular, the federal government actually is their responsibility, securing our borders and maintaining our image across the seas as our foreign policy. So we've allowed those to degrade while paying attention to things. The personal responsibility includes your own personal safety. Mm-hmm. And if an individual so chooses to use firearms as part of their own personal safety plan and the way they're going to protect their family, that is certainly their right and their responsibility in this country. Mm-hmm. Our Muslim neighbors, here in Oklahoma, even here, you can visit with individuals of all faiths that say, we must be diligent. We must, all faiths, look out for radical behavior, in particular in the Muslim community. And I know here in Oklahoma, we must do the same. The intent to harm, when you are perpetrating an act of violence, I don't care what faith you are, that's an act of violence. and it's a violation of my rights to live safely. And so we need to be ready to protect ourselves.
Right. And I look back at the statement that I believe Martin Luther King Jr. made, and that is to judge a person by the content of their character. And I think it is to look at the person's character or the group of people's character and their intentions, and not to simply throw people under the bus just because they don't align exactly with what you believe, or perhaps just their ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, and it's not to mention the fact that from a public safety perspective, that's pretty inefficient. That's not a real efficient way to do it. We're just broad strokes. We're looking for a particular type of person who's intent on doing harm to someone else, or to their property, or to their child. Those are the people that we want to fight in this country.
And I do agree with President Obama. He said last night that he was going to work to crack down on the people going in and out of the country, and to do have steeper evaluations that they have to go through, and the folks that have visas. I do agree with that in helping keep our borders safer and our homeland secure.
Well, and we have to remember too that we have individuals that will go through that process officially and do it correctly. But we do have a problem with individuals that come into the country or come and stay in violation of our laws. We have to all be, diligent, and our employers in particular, to make sure that they're providing an employment opportunity. It's someone who's following the rules, following the law, so that they're not inadvertently encouraging or allowing that type of behavior here in our state. But for the most part, most individuals want to live peacefully. They want to work. They want to raise their families. They want to be free to worship one way or the other. But we do have, obviously, a very small minority of human beings that have hate in their heart, and they want to harm the rest of us.
Yeah.
And the reason becomes irrelevant once. When the shooting starts, it doesn't matter the purpose behind the bullet. It really doesn't. We just have to be diligent and make sure that we're looking out for each other.
Senator Griffin, well said, and I think we're going to have to leave it there. I want to remind folks at home that we are wrapping up our interview with Senator AJ Griffin. We just have a couple seconds left. Is there a website that you would like to give us to follow your progress in the legislature?
The easiest way to track anything happening in the Oklahoma legislature during the session and the rest of the year is to follow our official website. In the Senate, it's oksenate.gov. And then, of course, my House of Representatives, same thing, okhouse.gov. I can be found there. You can track the legislation I'm working on, and then my contact information is always available on that public website as well, oksenate.gov. And I do encourage anybody that's needing assistance or has a problem that they'd like my help with. We have bill request deadline next Friday, and we'll be working on the legislation we'll put forth before my colleagues this new session that'll start the 1st of February. So any issue that you would like assistance with, whether you're in my district or not, feel free to call me.
Wonderful. Senator Griffin, thank you so much for joining the program tonight, and we hope that you come on again very soon.
I appreciate that, Jonathan. Merry Christmas to everyone, and celebrate the birth of our Christ, Lord Jesus.
Yes. Merry Christmas to you and to your family.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. I want everyone to tune in tomorrow night on Oklahoma Voice at 7 p.m. Senator Irvin Yin will be joining the program. He is the Oklahoma State Senator of District 40. And later this week, we'll also be receiving our weekly Thunder basketball update from Trey Shelton and Justin Wright. You do not want to miss this week's lineup. I'm Jonathan Clour. Good night, and thanks for listening. This has been Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. Tune in Monday through Friday night at 7 p.m. on the TuneIn Radio app, by live streaming at KTLV.com, or by radio on station 1220 AM.
KTLV AM 1220 concludes its broadcast day. For information on programming, operations, and sales, please check out our website at ktlv.com. This is KTLV, Midwest City, Oklahoma City.